You hear the word Caribbean, and what comes to mind? Probably pristine beaches, right? Turquoise water, just a perfect picture of paradise. But underneath that idyllic surface, there's a whole world of immense power and wealth.
And I'm not just talking about who owns a nice piece of beachfront property. No, we're talking about the quiet empires, the multi-generational dynasties that literally shape the economies of entire nations. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and try to understand who really holds the power in paradise.
You see, while tourists are looking at the vacation hotspots, a completely different reality is operating behind the scenes. It turns out a handful of incredibly powerful families have built empires so vast that the food you eat, the bank you might use, even the resort you stay in, it can all be traced back to the same few names. So, let's start with the families who built their fortunes from the ground up, on the core industries of the region. I'm talking about the very building blocks of their nations.
Our journey kicks off in Trinidad and Tobago with a family whose influence is felt all across the English-speaking Caribbean, the Sabga family. They're the masterminds behind the absolutely colossal Ansa Macau conglomerate. And their story? It's a classic immigrant story. It all started back in 1930 when the family patriarch Anthony Norman Sabga arrived from Syria. He started with just a single business, but through a series of really smart strategic moves, including a huge merger in the 80s, he built the industrial titan that we see today. And now, 3 generations later, that legacy is a true regional powerhouse.
I mean, the scale of their empire is just staggering. They built what's called a conglomerate, which is basically a massive corporation that owns a whole bunch of businesses that don't even seem related. Ever had a Cara beer? That's them. Read the Guardian newspaper in Trinidad? Yep, that's them too. From banking to car dealerships, their businesses touch almost every single part of daily life, which makes them a true industrial dynasty.
Okay, let's hop over to Jamaica, where our next 2 families pretty much dominate the consumer goods world. I mean, their products are on breakfast tables and in the hands of millions of people every single day.
First up, you've got the Hendrickson family. They took a small-town bakery and turned it into the National Baking Company, making absolute staples like hard-dough bread. Then there's the Mahfood family. Their Weiss & Co. group not only created beloved local brands like Wada and Biga soft drinks, but they also became the go-to local partner for giants like Coca-Cola. See, their power comes from making and distributing the things people use every single day.
Coming in at number 6 is another Jamaican family, but this one is different. They didn't just participate in the economy, they literally built the communities where hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans now live. I'm talking about the Madelon family.
So what's their crowning achievement? The Greater Portmore Housing Development. This thing was so massive, it basically created a whole new city. But their influence goes way deeper than that. By taking on leadership roles in huge national organizations like the Development Bank, they weren't just physically building the nation's communities, they were helping to design its economic policies too.
Okay, now we're going to shift gears a little bit. The next level of wealth belongs to people who didn't just build within the Caribbean. Instead, they leveraged global finance to build their fortunes, basically bridging the islands with the rest of the world.
At number 5, we have a man whose life is the absolute definition of a rags-to-riches story. He's a Jamaican-Canadian billionaire who started out as a hotel landscaper and went on to build a global financial empire, Michael Lee Chin.
His journey is just incredible. After moving to Canada, he finds his calling in the world of finance. And with a really simple buy, hold, and prosper philosophy, he took a tiny investment firm called AIC and grew its assets from less than $1 million to over $10 billion. Then he made this powerful return home, buying a controlling stake in one of Jamaica's biggest and most important banks.
And yeah, that strategy definitely paid off. His net worth is estimated at $1.9 billion. He really represents a new kind of modern Caribbean billionaire, someone who is globally connected, but who uses that global wealth to come back home and shape the foundational economic institutions.
All right, let's get to the top tier. These are the new icons of wealth. Their fortunes are built on global culture, modern finance, and digital power, all while celebrating their deep Caribbean roots. And in our top 3, we find an absolute cultural force of nature from Barbados. She's the wealthiest self-made woman on our list, and get this, her fortune wasn't built on music alone, but on some revolutionary entrepreneurship. Of course, we are talking about Rihanna. The whole game really changed in 2017 with Fenty Beauty. By launching with 40 inclusive foundation shades, she did way more than just sell makeup. She basically exposed a massive underserved market that the big legacy brands had ignored for decades. This created what's now known as the Fenty effect.
proving that inclusivity wasn't just the right thing to do, it was incredibly profitable. Her music career was the launchpad, for sure. But as you can see from these numbers, the huge bulk of her $1.4 billion fortune comes from her business genius. And in 2021, for her incredible global impact, she was officially declared a national hero of Barbados.
And now, for number 1. He is the wealthiest person ever to come from the Caribbean. He's Wall Street's hottest dealmaker, and he's the first ever Puerto Rican-born billionaire. Meet Orlando Bravo.
So Bravo didn't inherit some big industrial dynasty. He built his empire in the super high-stakes world of private equity. What's that? Well, to put it simply, his firm buys software companies, helps them become way more profitable, and then sells them. He pioneered this whole strategy for software, and the scale is just mind-blowing. And even with his global focus, he hasn't forgotten where he came from, pledging $100 million to fuel entrepreneurship back in Puerto Rico.
His personal net worth is an absolutely astronomical $9.8 billion. Now get this for context, that single fortune is equal to more than 2/3 of the entire annual budget for the government of Puerto Rico. He really represents the new face of Caribbean wealth, global, liquid, and totally technologically driven. So, after this whole journey through the world of Caribbean wealth, from concrete and beer to software and cosmetics, we are left with a really critical question. Does this much capital concentrated in the hands of so few people ultimately help or hinder the region? I mean, on one hand, these families are often the biggest employers. They're driving innovation and they're funding social programs. But on the other hand, that kind of concentrated power can stifle competition and give a tiny number of people a huge, outsized voice in politics. Which brings us to our final question. And this is really for you to think about. Is this level of wealth a force for progress? Or is it actually a barrier to more equitable growth for everyone in the Caribbean? It's a complex issue, and there are definitely no easy answers.